Okay, so we've got an hour, and actually what we really want to come out with is some very, very good ideas about what we are going to do to ensure that women in this country are actually enjoy all their human rights, which are all written up into the Beijing Platform for Action, which this government has agreed in Beijing. By the way, the Beijing Platform for Action, which was an extraordinary document, I mean literally a milestone in the advance for in initiatives to promote the women's equality and the empowerment of women. I don't think we'd ever get an agreement today. We wouldn't get it. It's 20 years, and we have not implemented it. But I think we need to be focusing then at the end of all this about what we can do in this country to make our government accountable for what they have agreed in the CEDAW and the Beijing Platform for Action, to do with what happens in women in this country, but also, this is very, very important, the impact of our policies, whether they're aid or military or trade, asylum, on women both living in other countries and women who come here as migrants, immigrants and asylum seekers. First of all, let us say that the austerity cuts in this country, the austerity cuts which have been imposed by the present government, and my God, I dread May the 7th. I dread it for the women in this country if we get this lot back. They have impacted most disproportionately on women in every possible way. Of course, even in the terms of unemployment, it was the majority of women who were working in the public sector who have lost their jobs. The terrible cut then to the local authorities who had to close down basic, important and key crucial services for women, such as shelters, violence against women, rape centres, all sorts of things. I think one of the most terrible things that had also happened, and Martha being another lawyer...
Legal aid.
I'm talking about that. How they cut legal aid.
Legal aid.
How they cut legal aid so that women who were actually in, for example, in women who were in violent marriages could no longer get legal aid. All sorts of issues to do with problems of benefits and so on. I mean, it was the end of justice. It was the death of justice. What happened to women in that way.
The bedroom tax. The bedroom tax.
The bedroom tax. The ending of the EMA, the Educational Maintenance Allowance. The huge problems for women now in actually accessing their opportunities in education and employment. And we actually come very, very low now on the international UNDP list on where we are. We've got more women in prison than any other country in Europe. We've got more children in prison, and we've got we have more teenage pregnancies than any other country in Europe. And we have these huge problems, and it is because women have not been listened to, they have not got a voice. We've got with this government, we've got a very, very low percentage of women actually in Parliament, and particularly very low representation of women at the local level. I think that we've got to look at what are the. It's no good having all these laws in place. The Convention on the Discrimination of all forms of discrimination against women, the UK government, do you know this? The UK government was taken to task because every 4 years it must report to Geneva about whether on its implementation of all these articles, and we were absolutely slapped, I mean literally slapped on the wrist and told off because we are in breach of so many of our obligations, both under this and under the Beijing platform. It wasn't perfect, I know, but until this government came in, we had something called the Women's National Commission, the WNC. Okay, it was far from perfect. However, it was much better than what many countries had, and we did, through this, have an institutional mechanism to actually represent women's voices. It wasn't perfect, it was maybe didn't do enough for women in minority groups, it didn't do enough perhaps for lesbian, gay and transgender rights. There were lots of, it didn't do enough perhaps on all sorts of issues of violence against women, but it was still, it was there, and it was an institutional mechanism that was recognised by the CEDAW. And this government, when it got rid of all the quangos, without any consultation with us, the non-governmental women's organisations, it was closed. And we now have, and we were told off about it, all we have now is the government, the Government Equality Office, which is part of the Home Office, saying that they actually represent women, when of course they don't, because they're government.
Well, the thing